Hi everyone, my name's Scott. Welcome to Planes, Trains, Everything and welcome to Prague. This is the third and final video in this series of Could I Live in ... Video number 1 was in Gibraltar, Britain in the sun. It sounds fantastic, but is it really as good as it sounds? I'll put a link below. Have a look at that video if you haven't already done so. It's been very, very popular. The second video was Vienna, recently voted Europe's most livable city for the 11th year in a row. However, is it really that livable? And again, I'll put a link below. This one is Prague. Prague once was the low-cost capital of Eastern Europe, but is it still a bargain, or is it just as expensive as any other European city? Could I live here? Well, over the next 24 hours, I'm going to find out. First things first, I am going to go and check in at my hotel. It's the Ibis Wenceslas Square. It is an Ibis hotel, but it definitely isn't on Wenceslas Square, that's for sure. I'll see you shortly. I like the environmentally friendly wooden door key. I won't show you the room because if you've seen one Ibis, you've seen them all, but I bet you haven't seen this view before. Pretty impressive, huh? There's a Novotel next door, and I think they get the same view. Firstly, time for a quick history lesson. In 1992, Czechoslovakia split into the Czech and Slovak republics. It was known as the Velvet Revolution. In 2022, the Czech government sat around a table and thought, we need to have a name that's a little snappier than the Czech Republic. They used Ireland as an example. No one really calls Ireland the Republic of Ireland, although that's its official name. Everyone calls it Ireland. So they wanted something a little snappier than the Czech Republic. So they sat around the table and thought about this all night and came up with Czechia. And that's now the English language name for the country, recognized by the United Nations. If you still call this place the Czech Republic, you're out of date, baby. The thing is though, Czechia sounds very much like Chechnya, which is a kind of a war-torn kind of Republic of Russia. They didn't think of that very well, did they? Prague. Prague has roughly the same number of visitors as Vienna, around about 4 million a year. So it must be doing something right. Yes, so despite my hotel being called the Ibis Wenceslas Square, I'm actually going to now walk down to Wenceslas Square. Being a very touristy place, I reckon there's going to be quite a lot of restaurants, which is a good thing because I am starving. Large swathes of this area are construction sites, which takes away some of the charm of this historic and beautiful area. Right, let's get some food. Well, here's a couple of factoids. The pros of living in Prague. Clothes across the country in general have been calculated to be something like 26% cheaper than they are in the UK. When it comes to transport in Prague, cars are not really required. You've got metros, trains, buses, regional and long distance trains, and a major international airport on your doorstep, which is pretty handy if you're a travel YouTuber like me. You've also got on the borders countries such as Slovakia, Poland, Germany and Austria. So you're right in the thick of it. If you do decide to have a car, petrol is slightly cheaper than in the UK. Just before I came here, I looked at UK averages for non-supermarket petrol from Shell, BP and Esso, and the UK average was £1.45 a litre, or 43 Czech koruna. The Prague average is about 39 per litre, so it's just slightly cheaper than the UK. Right, the old battery levels are starting to drop, so I'm going to call it quits for tonight. I'll continue this video tomorrow. Petrol. Some of the apartment buildings on the outskirts of the city centre, I'm actually on the other side of the river, are absolutely stunning, but you'd pay a premium for them. More likely, if you're going to be staying in Prague, you're going to be living out in the suburbs somewhere, and it's not cheap. Average starting price for a one-bedroom apartment is around about 30,000 Czech krona a month. That's around about £1,000. That includes bills, but doesn't include Wi-Fi, and that's a starting price. This is the Vltava River, and that's a good pub quiz question. Name the river that flows through Prague. Vltava. Having used my first ever e-bike in Vienna recently, I thought I'd have a shot at these electronic scooters. You can't really use a GoPro and use them safely. Whoa. Good fun, but not a good idea to use a GoPro while riding one of these. I think I'll put it away. Was to have the scooter for just an hour. That was the fastest hour of my life. Great fun. However, note to self, always check the road conditions first. If they're cobbled, they don't go well with scooters. Oof. So electric scooters can be added to the form of transport available here in Prague. Yes, so accommodation is a bit expensive here in Prague. In fact, it's said that around about 40% of your average Prague resident's income is spent on rent. That's high. And if you wanted to actually buy or rent a property, you will have to get someone who can speak Czech. Very few people will speak English. You will need an interpreter. That is a major hurdle you'll have to overcome. It's been said that food prices here in Prague are around 36% cheaper than in the UK on average. There is a supermarket down here, so I'm going to go and explore a store. I do have a shopping list from my local Morrison supermarket in Paisley. I've converted all the prices from pounds into Czech krona, just so I can do an easier like-for-like comparison. Let's hope I don't get arrested by security. Righty-ho, there's a Vila in there. I've got my shopping list. Let's get into stealth mode. £64 krona back home, 31 krona here. no Peroni, but they do have Staropramen at 20 Corona. 0.33 of a litre. 6 eggs back home, 45. Here, 35. They don't do 12s, they do 10s, but back home 77 Corona for 12, 70 for 10. 250 gram packs are usually about 119 Corona. Here, 89. Back home, Morrison's Extra Virgin 500ml would be about 196. Here it's 399, that's for 1.5 litres. 42 back home, 44.90 here. Okay, if I wanted to live here, being a UK passport holder, the first problem is the EU 90 days in 180 days rule, which means after 90 days I must leave the EU before I can come back in again 90 days later. However, there is a workaround, and it's called a żywnościenne uprawnienie. I said that like a local, didn't I? And that is a 1-year residence visa. There are quite a few hoops to jump through, but apparently it's once you tick all the boxes, it's quite easy to get. Ha! One slight problem, if I was over here I would be self-employed, so that doesn't work. Oh dear. Prague is an absolute construction site at the moment. Everywhere you go there's road closures and things. But I've now found another villa. Shall we go in?
Go back where you can.
Okay.
Oh, this
Deep clean whitening back home is about 59. Here, these are around about 68, 79, 80 Corona. Starting price is 33, 75ml. Cheapest back home is 30. Heinz 700 grams back home, the equivalent of 116 Corona. Here it's 70. Coke brands 1 litre 75 back home is around about 71 Corona. Here 1.5 is only 33. They don't seem to do Italian beers here. Well, not in Vila anyway. Staropramen 21. I've just been walking around randomly and I've stumbled across Wenceslas Square again. I was actually sitting in a little park there and I was charging my GoPro, and the guy next to me says, "Is that a GoPro?" And I said, "Yes it is." And we started talking, and he's a YouTuber. He has a channel, but it's a hobby basically. But he's been living over here for 20 years. He's from Northern Ireland, and it's amazing. We're talking YouTube here in Prague. But I did ask him, what did you think of the prices and things, as he'd been here for 20 years? And he says it is nowhere near as cheap as it used to be. It's actually quite expensive. And that's what the websites tend to say, and that's what I'm starting to find as well. It is not a bargain basement city break, that's for sure. Which means it's going to be even more expensive if you come here to live. I've got the police watching me. Wherever I go in the world, I get a police escort. You didn't know that, did you? There's another police escort just going past, waving to me, making sure I'm okay. Yes, so could I live in Prague? Well, price-wise, accommodation very expensive. The cost of food seems to be either on par or just slightly cheaper than the UK, not by much. Petrol slightly cheaper, transport a lot cheaper. but it's the accommodation part which is the expensive bit. The problem trying to live in Prague is, it's like most capital cities around Europe. In the city core, in that bubble, people tend to speak a bit of English. But once you get out into the suburbs where you will be living, if you were to live here, you'll find that a lot less people will speak English, understand English. You need to know how to speak a bit of Czech. Basic Czech would be a minimum, but you'd really have to crack down on your Czech. Part of the problem is, and this was the guy from Belfast, he kind of mentioned this as well, and he touched on it. It goes back when Prague was a really cheap city. It was ruined by a lot of stag parties from the UK because there was plenty of booze and the accommodation was cheap. And a lot of people are kind of meh when it comes to English-speaking people. Okay, they're happy to serve you in restaurants and things and in bars, but to get to know you, it's a bit hard. And that's what that guy from Belfast was saying as well. He said, yeah, they tolerate you, but you can see they're not really bothered that much. you can do all you like, but will you be able to make friends? It's pretty hard out in the suburbs. So decision time, even though the Czechia and Prague are in a brilliant location to explore this part of Europe, overall you would have to have a half-decent knowledge of the Czech language, and that would be my problem, apart from the fact that I'd have to get a visa of some sort to live here as well. I might have to find a Czech woman to marry. That might get around some of the problems, but yeah, the language seems to be the biggie. If you've got any legal things to do, like signing up for accommodation, you'll really need an interpreter, and that is the problem. So overall, could I live here? Yes, I'd love to. Would I? No, I would get it maybe a 5 out of 10. But anyway guys, thanks for coming along to Czechia and Prague. It is a beautiful city, but would I live here? Nah. Thanks again. I'll see you next time.